We begin today the Gemara on Daf Samach Vav, right at the beginning of the Yamud. The Gemara here will bring a machlekes connected to the Mishnah of Samachei Amid Beis, where it brought a case of wine, yayin nesach, that fell onto grapes. And so what do you do? So the Mishnah says, if the grapes are just intact and they don't get absorbed in the grapes, so you just rinse it off. But if it's split open, so then it gets absorbed in the grapes, then it becomes aser. Okay, so let's see here. The Gemara brings a machlekes regarding what kind of wine are we talking about here. Zok the Gemara chamra atika v'invi. If you have old wine that spills out onto grapes, so divrei hakoil here, everybody will agree that b'noisen tam, that the iser of the wine of this yayin nesach and these grapes is if there's enough wine here that it'll give a taste into these grapes. Okay, so the point that the Gemara is saying here is that there's two different halachas when you have the mixture of something that's aser into something which is mutter, something which is permitted. If it's min b'minai, if what gets mixed in, this is the basis of the whole Gemara here, as we'll see. If what gets mixed in is min b'minai, it's the same exact kind, so then it becomes aser b'mashul. But if it's something which is a different min, two different minim, the min of iser is a different kind of what it's getting mixed into, so then you have to go by whether it actually is giving a taste. So if it's something that you could taste, then you would know that. But when you can't taste it, so what's considered to be the amount that it would be bottled there and it would be mutter? If there's 60 times, shishim, it has to be bottled with shishim 60 times more of what the iser is.
Why is it because
what by min b'minor? That's the Gemara will discuss it also later. That's always the klal. It's actually different rules about it. Not always is min b'minor b'mashu, but generally speaking, when there's an iser of min b'minor, so there's different reasons for it. But it becomes also even b'mashu. So over here, when it comes to old wine that's fell and it gets mixed into grapes. So everybody agrees that the old wine is not the same min as this grapes, has a different taste than the grapes itself. So therefore, b'noisen tam, the iser of that grapes is only going to be if there's a taste from this old wine. Now here, there's another case. Chamre chadete, fresh wine, or maybe it's still even grape juice. Be'invi, that gets mixed into grapes. And this is yayin nesach. How much does it have to be to aser this? So Abaye says, b'mashul. In this case, even a tiny drop will make it aser, because according to Abaye, as the Gemara will explain, it's considered to be the same min, so it becomes aser b'mashul. Rava says, b'noisen tam, that the iser is going to be, even in this case, the iser is only, it goes by how much would give a taste. Now, be'emes, these two things have the same taste. It's fresh wine and the grapes, they have the same taste. But b'noisen tam over here means that only if there's 60 times more grapes against that yayin nesach, which is aser, then it would be allowed. Okay, so the Gemara explains here the basis of their machlokes. Abaye says that in this case, it'll be aser even with a tiny drop, because basar taima is linon. When it comes to this point there, that when it's the same min, it's aser even a mashahu. What defines it that it's the same min? You go by the taste. So therefore, since they both have the same taste, it's fresh wine, like the same taste as the grapes. So therefore, it's going to be aser even with a mashu. It's the same min, and therefore min b'minoi b'mashu. When it's the same min, the iser is even with a tiny drop. However, Rava says that even in this case, it goes by. It's considered to be a different min, and therefore it goes by whether it's giving a tam. That means it has to be less than 60 against it, and therefore it'll give a taste. Why? Because Rava says, Basa shmaz linon. What defines whether it's the same min or not? Not the taste. It goes by the name of what it is. And here it's not the same name. V'hai shmalachud. This has one name. This is wine. And v'hai shmalachud. And this has another name. This is grapes. So therefore, min b'shein and minai. So therefore, it's considered to be two different kinds. Min b'shein and minai, the halacha of something which is aser, which is a different min, it's only b'noisen tam. If it gives a taste, then it's going to be aser. That's the machlokes b'negeya to new wine, fresh wine that falls onto grapes.
So now we're going on two things: sai on this and tam, and sai on shema.
Rava says that the fact that it has the same taste is irrelevant. It has the same taste.
That's why it's nice and tam. But use the thing that has
Yeah,
nice and tam.
the isser is going to be b'nois and tam.
So
You see, so that's what Rashi here Bavanan says. I mentioned before. It really has the same taste. You're right. I understand what you're asking. How could he say the b'nois and tam if it has the same taste? It's not going to be giving a different taste. Nice and tam over here in Rove does not mean it adds a different taste. Nice and tam means that it's less than 60, and therefore it's that wine, the Nesach, that's aser, is felt in the grapes. You're not going to be able to sense it because it's the same taste. But if it's less than 60, then that wine is there, is present, and you could feel it, even if it's not a different taste. That's what nice and tam here means. It means less than 60. Tanan. So let's see what it says in Mishnah. The Mishnah said before the Mishnah Daf Samachay, Yayin Nesach Shanafal Agabi Anovim, that Yayin Nesach falls onto grapes. And so what did the Mishnah say? That, as I mentioned, if it's grapes that are intact, so then it doesn't get absorbed into grapes, you just rinse it off. But if it's split open, so then it gets absorbed into grapes and it's going to be aser. So now, the Gemara is thinking, what kind of grapes is the Mishnah talking about? Or what kind of wine is the Mishnah talking about? Chamre chadete, fresh wine. Be'envi, that falls onto grapes. So this is the case that Abai and Rav are arguing about. Now, my lab, don't you think the pshat of the Mishnah is b'nois and tam? When it says that the wine, the yain nesach aser, is the grapes, when it's split open, it's because you have enough wine that will give a taste into the grapes. And only then is it aser. Not if a tiny drop of wine falls onto these grapes. So the Gemara says, well, why are you saying this? Loi, b'mashu. It'll be even, according to Abaye, even a mashu of this yain nesach will also be aser. Now, the Gemara says, no, but Hamidik Tani Seifa. In the end of the Mishnah says clearly, Zeh Klal, the rule here is as follows. Kol Shabaha Nosei B'nois and Tam. Kol Shabaha Nosei B'nois and Tam, Aser. If you have a good taste that's added from this wine that's Aser, so then it'll become Aser. Kol She'ein Ba Nosei B'nois and Tam, but if what's Aser does not give a good taste, so the Mishnah gives an example, let's say the Yayin Nesach is vinegar, and it gives a bad taste, so then mutter, then it will be mutter. So Miklau, we clearly see here the b'nois and tam askinu. The Mishnah is saying that the problem with the yayin nesach is not a mashu. The problem is because it's giving a taste. So if so, you can say you see from here, like what Rav said, that it goes by the taste that it gives, and that's even if it's new wine and it has the same taste as the grapes, but since it has a different name, this is called wine and this is called grapes, so it's considered to be min b'she'ena minai. But the Gemara says, Abaye will answer you, masnisen b'chamre atika. The Mishnah has to be talking about old wine. So old wine has a different taste from the grapes, not only a different name, but a different taste, and therefore, even Abaye will agree over here that it goes by the nice and tam, because it's not the same min, it has a different taste. So again, b'chamre atika be'inve. Yeah, the old wine into grapes. That's what the Mishnah is speaking about. Now here the Gemara brings how this machlokes of Abaye and Rave plays out in a different case, but here actually it'll be the opposite. Here it's a case where it has the same name, but it does not have the same taste. The exact opposite as before. So the Gemara, chala de chamra, if you have vinegar that came from wine, or v'chala de shichra, vinegar that came from beer. So they both have the same name, vinegar. Or another case, chamira de chiti, the leaven of wheat, or maybe you can call it yeast, the yeast or the leaven of wheat, or v'chamire de sari, the leaven from barley. So again, they have the same name, but they don't have the same taste. So here it's same machlokes, but it'll be the opposite. Abaye says in this case that b'nois and tam, that the isser is going to be only if it gives a taste, because basataima is linon, we follow the taste, and v'hai taim luchud and v'hai taim luchud. Over here they have a different. The high time luchud and the high time luchud, and each one of them have a different taste. Yeah, I'm good. Since they each have a different taste. Okay, 1 second. So where am I over here?
No, you're going before.
No. Okay.
Start You're wrong.
You go by the taste, and therefore the high time luchud and the high time luchud. Okay, each one has its own taste. So if each one has its own taste, min b'she'ena minai, and therefore it's considered to be a different min, or min b'she'ena minai b'nois and tam. And because it's two different minim, so therefore only if it gives a taste is it going to be asa. Rava says that you go by a mashuhu. What is a mashuhu? Why only a mashuhu? Because basa shma is linon. Because you follow the name that it has. And therefore over here they both have the same name. V'hai chola mikri, v'hai chola mikri. The vinegar, whether the vinegar comes from wine, or whether the vinegar comes from beer, but they both have the name of vinegar. And v'hai chamire mikri, v'hai chamire mikri. Or regarding the leaven or the yeast, they both have the same name. And therefore, even though this is from wheat and this is from barley, it's the same min, and as long as it's the same min, the isser is going to be only a mashuhu. Okay, so the Rishonim point out, even though it's not exactly the same name, because this is called wine vinegar, this is beer vinegar, I think the name is malt vinegar, but it doesn't matter. You look at the main name. The main name is vinegar, so it's the same name. It's going to be also b'mashuhu, and the same also regarding the leaven or the yeast. Abaye said, what's my source that in order to define what's considered to be the same min, the same kind, you follow the taste? Because the Tanya, we learned in a Braise, or it's actually a Mishnah. The Mishnah says, Tavlin, Beis, Gimel Shemis. If you have different spices, and these spices have 2 or 3 different names to it. And so the Rashi says, we're talking here about spices that are pilpul. So it's pepper, hot pepper. But there's different kinds. There's white pepper, there's black pepper, and then there's pilpul aruch, three different kinds of peppers. V'hein min echad. But it's all from the same min because it's all from pepper. And now we're talking over here, what are we talking about? We're talking about these things that are aser. These are spices that is something that it came from something that's aser. Okay? Now, or that's one case. The second case of this Mishnah is min gimel. 3 different minim altogether of spices. Let's say you have pepper, and then I think the example is Rashi says cumin, or 3 different kinds of spices. Asurin, they're going to cause an isser. If they get mixed into your pot of food, they're going to be asur mitzdarfen. And you could combine the 3 different spices. If one spice alone is not strong enough to give a taste and to asur this pot of food, so you can combine the 3 different spices together to give a taste. Why is this? Chizkiya explained, we're talking about spices that they together, when you blend them together, they give the same kind of sweetness or whatever taste they give to the food. So since together they sweeten and they give a taste to this food, so therefore it's going to answer it. So the Gemara says, here's Abaye's raya that you go by the taste. Because if you're going to say that you follow the flavor, the taste that it gives, so therefore it's all one and the same taste, even though it's different kinds of spices. But because they combine together to create one blend of a flavor and one taste, so therefore it could combine to aser. But if you're going to say that you follow the name of these different spices, they each have different names of spices. In the second case of this Mishnah, it said that there are 3 completely different minim. So how could they combine together to aser? So from here we see that you go by the fact that you give one flavor together. And Rava will answer you that, yeah, you're right, you see this from this Mishnah, but this Mishnah is following only one opinion. This Mishnah follows the opinion of Rab Meir. The Tanyas we learned in Rab Braise. Rab Yehuda said in the name of Rab Meir that minayin l'chol yisurim shebetayra. How do I know that Bechlal, regarding all different yisurim in the Torah, shemitztarfen zemzeh, that they could combine together to answer something? So even if you have, let's say, chaylev, forbidden fats, and then there's a isser of blood, or another isser, a treifis, nevelis, all different kinds of isurim, they could combine together to answer something. So the Meir says, because it says, Shanema lo yiseichal kol toyeva. Do not eat anything which is abominable. Kol sheta'aftilach, everything that I said is not allowed, goes together. Harehu bebal toichal, it falls into one category of the isser not to eat. So this is Rab Meir's opinion. We don't paskin this way. You can't combine the taste of one thing and another isser, 2 different isurim together to asa something. But Rav Meir says that you learn from Lo Yiseichel Kol Teyeva that you could combine different isurim together. So if Rav Meir says you could combine different isurim, he would definitely say that you could combine if it's the same isser, but it's just different minim of tavlinim, different types of spices, definitely you could combine them together with the flavor to aser it. But since we don't pass like Rav Meir, Rav says that we don't follow the taste. And if it's different taste, it's not considered to be the same min. Okay, now the Gemara brings another case where Abaye and Rav argued. So first is the case of chala l'goy chamra. If you have vinegar that is aser, vinegar from yayin nesach, that got poured into wine. So in this case, divrei hakol b'noisen tam. Everybody will agree that this vinegar will aser the wine if that vinegar is enough to change the taste of the wine. Okay, now however, chamra l'goy chala, but if it's the opposite, if wine is poured into vinegar, the wine which is aser is poured into vinegar, here there's a machlekes. Okay, so what's the difference between whether vinegar is being poured into wine or wine into vinegar? So as Rashi explains, and we'll see here from the Gemara, the difference is that vinegar has a much stronger aroma to it. So when wine falls into vinegar, what happens is, as the wine is coming into the place where the vinegar is, close enough to the vinegar, the aroma of the wine itself gets immediately affected by the vinegar. It changes, it gets immediately affected by the very strong aroma of the vinegar. But that's not the case when it's the opposite. If it's wine and there's vinegar that's being poured into the wine, so the vinegar is stronger in its aroma than the wine. It won't be affected by the aroma of the wine. Okay, so therefore let's go back a second. So therefore when it says, when chala l'goy chamra, if the vinegar is being poured into the wine, so over here, the vinegar has a taste for itself, it has its own aroma, so therefore divrei hakol b'noisen tam. It's two different things, has two different names, two different tastes, and it has its own reyach as well, its own aroma, so it's going to aser the wine if it changes the taste of the wine. But chamra l'goy chala, if it's wine that's being poured into vinegar, over here, that wine, even before it hits the vinegar, it doesn't have the same name as the vinegar, it doesn't have the same taste as the vinegar, but it already has the reyach of the vinegar. When it gets close enough to the vinegar, now it already has its reyach, its aroma. So Abaye Amar, Tatar Gover, okay, also be connected to this, yeah. Abaye Amar, so Abaye says, b'mashu, that therefore in this case, even a mashu of the vinegar will aser the wine. Just because it got the same aroma as it, that's enough to consider it to be like the same min, and even a mashu will be aser. But Rava says, b'noisen tam, that no, it's still considered to be a different min, so therefore you go by the fact that only if it gives a flavor from this vinegar, then it'll be aser. Okay, the Gemara will explain the details. Let's see.
It's automatic, so.
Again? Right, no, but it didn't mix yet. Now the reyach, the wine, attains the reyach of the vinegar that it's falling into. Okay, and therefore, when it gets mixed in, it's going to be considered to be one min. The Gemara will explain here. Abaye says b'mashu that the reason that it's going to be also even with a mashu, because when this wine is falling into the vinegar, reicha chala, it immediately gets the aroma of the vinegar. V'taima chamra, true, it still has the taste of wine, but in such a case, chala, it's considered to be like vinegar already, because it has the reyach, it's the aroma of the vinegar, it's like vinegar, and therefore, once it actually mixes with the vinegar, avalei min b'minoi, just because of the fact that it has the same reyach, that's enough of a reason that it's considered to be like one kind. And the rule is v'chol min b'minoi, when two things are mixed and it's the same kind, b'masho, the iser will be even with a masho. Rav Amar, however, Rav says b'noisen tam, then in this case, it's still only going to be aser if the wine gives a flavor into this vinegar. Why? Because in this case, reiche chala, when the wine now has the aroma of the vinegar, but v'taim chamra, it still has the taste of wine. So chamra, it's considered to be wine. V'havale min b'she'ena minoi. So therefore, the wine and the vinegar are still two different kinds. V'chol min b'she'ena minoi, when it's two different minim, b'noisen tam. So the isser is only going to be if it gives a taste. Okay, that's machlekes regarding the aroma. Now another machlekes connected to this between Abaye and Rava. Hai bastia. When you have this bastia, what's this bastia? On the top of a barrel, they would make a hole in order to have the ability to smell the wine, to see what the quality of the wine is. That's a bastia, a hole for smelling. So if a guy is smelling the wine of a yid, shaper dami, that's okay. There's no problem with this. Emma says there's no chiddush. Why should there be any problem if the guy comes to smell, to test the taste of the wine of the yid? But the next case here, there is a problem, so maybe you would think that there should be a reason for a gzeira. Chacham were not guys. There's no problem for the guy smelling the wine of a yid. However, Yisrael b'day v'kachavim, a yid that's smelling the wine of a guy, wine that's yayin nesach through this hole. So Abaya Amar Aser. Abaya says that you're not allowed to smell the wine that's yayin nesach, and the reason is because according to Abaya, the reyach itself is a very powerful thing. It's equivalent to drinking it, which is aser. So just like drinking is aser, just the smell, the aroma, the good aroma of this wine is also something which is aser.
Because you have hano from it.
Not the hano, actually. No, not the point is not that. No, the point is not the hano. The point is that it's equivalent to mamish drinking it. Okay, I'll explain in a second. Let's see. Rava says it's allowed because he says the aroma is not equivalent to drinking it. The Gemara explains. Abaya says that it's aser to smell this wine of yayin nesach because reicha milsi. The smell itself is significant enough, similar to drinking. Just like drinking it is aser, so too you may not smell it. However, Rava says that it's allowed because reicha lav milsi. The aroma, the smell that you get from the wine does not have the significance like tasting it, like drinking the wine. Okay, so now just to go back to the point that you said, we're not talking just about hana here, because if you would say that even if reyach, if smelling the wine is not equivalent to drinking, but still you get the pleasure from the good smell of the wine, so yayin nesach is asur b'hana. The Rishonim actually asked this question. Even if Rava says that lav milsihi, that smelling it is not equivalent to tasting or drinking it, but it's still a hana, so why shouldn't it be aser? So Taisus over here says, if it was just the hana of the smell itself, there's a hana in smelling the wine, but there's also a kilkul. When you smell wine, on one hand it causes hana, but on the other hand it also causes a negative reaction in the person's body. It also causes a certain kilkul to the person. So therefore it equals out. So there is no hana here. The question though is whether this reyach of the wine could be considered to be something so strong, it's equivalent to drinking it mamish. That's what Abayi's chiddush was. So Rava says, what's my source to say the reicha v'loy klumu, that the smell is nothing. You can't compare it to tasting the wine itself, because it now we learned in the Mishnah Tane shehisikoi bekamen shel truma, a oven that was heated with kamen, a kind of spice from truma. V'avabai is a pas, and then you bake bread in this oven. So a pas muteres, you can eat this bread. Because there is no taste of this kamun, which is probably translated as cumin. It's not cumin yet. So there's no taste of this cumin in the bread. There is an aroma from the cumin that was used to heat up the oven, but there's no actual cumin over here, the mamashas. There's no real mamashas of the cumin inside the bread, and therefore it's going to be mutter. That's the source of Rava. We see that the aroma itself is not equivalent to a mamashas of something like when you drink it or taste it. But Abaye, one second. Abaye says that we can't prove in that case. Because Shani Osam, the mikle isure. In that case, the cumin which is heating up the oven is getting burnt. It's not like in this case we're speaking here about the barrel of wine where a person sticks his nose to the barrel of wine and the fresh geschmack aroma of the wine he's smelling it's not getting burnt. Over here, because it's getting burnt, so therefore Abaye would agree that in this case the smell of this that goes into the bread that's being baked there is not a problem. Taisus over here brings up that this Shaila of Reyach is also a big sugya in Sechta Psachim that discusses the same minyan, and this can be relevant to a lot of different cases. One of the examples Taisus brings is in the oven. If you're not, or even there's Pesach, but no, but B'chlal, when you're baking in the same oven. If you're baking in the same oven chicken or meat, and then together with cheese, it's not mixing. You didn't mix them, but there's the aroma. It's baking together. Obviously, we paskin, you're not allowed to do that. But this is where the discussion comes from. This is the shaila over here regarding the reyach. Okay, so the Gemara Omer Rav Mari. So Rav Mari says Ketanoi. It would seem like that the argument here regarding the reyach, machlekes of Abaye and Rava, is a machlekes of Tanaim, because it says here in this brayse or this Mishnah rather, Harei de pas chama, a person that takes out a hot bread from the oven, the nosna al pi chavish yayin, and he put the bread down onto a barrel of wine, but it was shel truma, a barrel of wine from truma that Yisrael may not have anah from this. So Rav Meir says that it's aser, because what happens is it sort of draws in the taste of the wine, goes into the bread. So now you're getting this is not a mamashus of the wine, but you're getting the reach of the wine that goes into the bread. Rabbi Yehuda matter, but Rabbi Yehuda says that doesn't matter. It's okay. Now Rabbi Yossi says it depends. Rabbi Yossi matter b'shal chitin, by wheat bread it doesn't draw so much of the taste, so therefore it'll be mutter. V'oisa b'shal sayrim, but with barley he says it'll be awesome because the barley bread has a nature to draw more of that taste of the wine into the bread. So my love, don't you think that this is exactly what they're arguing about? This is the machlokes of the Tanoim. The Marsava Reichemilsi. Rab Meir says that it's usher because he says that aroma of the wine that goes into the bread that placed on top of the barrel of wine is significant. It's like the mamashas of this wine of Truma that it's usher. Omar Savar, however, Rabbi Yehuda says Reichelav Klumu. The aroma of this that goes into the bread is insignificant. Therefore, you can still eat the bread. So it's the same machlokes like Abaye and Rava. So the Gemara says, not necessarily is it fully connected. Partially, yeah, we do see the same point there, but there's different ways how you can learn this machlekes. Okay, so the Gemara says, L'Rave, according to Rava's opinion, so Rava said that the reyach is insignificant, it doesn't matter. Vadai Tanoi, his opinion cannot fit according to everybody's opinion, because Rab Meir says it's aser. The only way to explain Rab Meir is because he says that the aroma that goes into the bread asers it. So Rava definitely does not fit with Rab Meir. Rava was saying only according to Rab Yehuda. And according to Rava, yeah, this is exactly what the machlokes is, whether the taste that comes from the aroma is significant or not. However, La Abaye, says the Gemara, according to Abaye, mi leme tanoi, do we have to say that Abaye's opinion that said that it's going to be aser, is that also going to be dependent on the machlokes Tanoim or not? Okay, so the Gemara explains, Amalach Abaye can tell you that no, in this Braise, they're arguing on a different case. There's different degrees of aroma. When you speak about Reich, it's not all the same kind of a case. So Abaye will tell you, Lav mi yitmar Allah, didn't we learn regarding this Mishnah? That Amar Rabba Bar Bachana, Amar Reish Lakish, Rabba Bar Bachana said in the name of Reish Lakish, what is this Mishnah speaking about? They're only arguing in a specific case. Bepas chama, v'chaves psucha. If it's a case where this is hot bread, fresh bread out of the oven, and it's an open barrel of wine, divrei hakoil, everybody will agree asura, that the bread will be aser because you place the bread, it's hot bread, it definitely draws the taste of the wine. It's an open barrel of wine, it definitely will be aser. That everybody will agree to, and this is like a Abaye's shitta that says that the reach itself is significant. Now, the past senenes, on the other hand, the other extreme, if it's cold bread and the chavis magufa and it's a sealed barrel of wine and you're just placing the bread on top of the barrel of wine, it's in a sealed divrei kol muteres. Everybody will agree that it's muter. It doesn't get any of the taste of the wine at all. So where's the machlokes? Ela bepas chama v'chavis magufa in two cases. Either if it's hot bread and it's placed on a barrel of wine which is closed, or so it could draw some taste. Or the past seinenes, or it's cold bread, v'chavis psucha, and it's placed on top of an open barrel of wine. Here's the machlokes, whether this situation is significant enough for it to draw any taste of the wine. So as you see over here, Reish Lakish is saying, everybody agrees to this premise that the reyach is significant to asa the bread. The only machlokes is in this kind of situation where it's either cold bread on top of the open barrel or hot bread on the closed barrel, whether does it actually draw taste or not. So therefore, Abaye concludes and says, "V'hadidi," the case that I was talking about regarding the person that is smelling from the wine. Nami kepas chama v'chavis psucha dami. A person that bends down and smells directly from the barrel of wine, that's similar to the case where you have an open barrel of wine and you place hot bread on it, that it definitely draws the taste of the wine into the bread. Over there, everybody agrees that it's usher, so therefore that's the case that Abaye says that I said that it's usher, and that's according to L'Kul Alma, according to Rab Meir, Rab Yehuda. They're only arguing in a case which is a level lower, whether it actually draws the taste or not. This is the pshat according to Abaye. But according to Rava, the simple pshat of here is some Rishonim say, Rava doesn't agree to this whole pshat of Reish Lakish, this whole distinction over here. According to Rava, they're arguing about the point itself. The machlokes between Rab Meir and Rab Yehuda is like the Gemara suggested in the beginning. Is Reach a problem or not? And Rava is paskening like Rab Yehuda that Reach is not a problem, even if you have the strongest Reach. According to one pshat that Rishonim say, Rava would say even if you have a real strong Reach with the hot bread and the open barrel of wine, according to Rava, that's when they argued, and Rava was paskening like Rab Yehuda. That's the one pshat in the Rishonim. Other Rishonim say that Rava agrees to this pshat, and be'emes Rava would agree to Abaye that in a case where it's a really strong smell, like the hot bread and an open barrel of wine, that there even Rava would agree also that it would be aser.
How do we pass